We have a pretty light agenda today. So I guess we get right into it with a land acknowledgement from Karen.
Sure. Let me see if I can read this one. Land acknowledgements always need to be current, and we need to do them freshly all the time. Otherwise, it becomes something that, which is not the purpose of it. We often too, as folks who are settlers, tend to do territory acknowledgements and land acknowledgements, and they're two very different things. And the thing is, a territory is really a colonial standard. We decide on ownership of land, territory, and that just is an indigenous way of thinking. So this is the land acknowledgement. I just wrote for something that we did yesterday, and it talks about St. Paul Street was originally a path, and it was traveled by old and young alike for millennia. For folks of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Adirondack people, for the Anishinaabe, and for the Mississaugas of the Credit. The colonial and imperialistic powers that colonize these lands promised to live in accordance with the two-road Wampum Agreement, and they did not. We often just like to say that we are from an area that was covered by the Gishwek-Wanspoon Wampum Agreement, but that was created long before colonialized powers actually settled on this land. So it really was not what we were invited into, or we were invited into, but not what we agreed to whatsoever. Then we signed a treaty number 3 known as the Between Lakes Treaty, which if you look at the actual treaty coverage, means that all of the land of Brantford and so many other places on the side within 5 miles of the river there are actually not colonial land. And we would actually have to cede that territory if we actually wanted to live in agreement with that. So we didn't live in agreement with that either. But we do acknowledge that the stewards of the land upon which we all live, work, and play, but they have kept that going for us. And we recognize that there is still much reparation and much reconciliation to be done. And when we actually hear a land acknowledgement from folks of Indigenous work, that's the Great Thanksgiving, which is about half an hour long. And you give thanks for the actual land, which we can't even touch. We're in that place right now where if we were to actually figure out how far are we from the land, how far do our shoes remove us, this laminate, the girders underneath before we can even touch our Mother Earth, it's quite daunting. And I think in some ways, perhaps that's why we're so out of touch with the land. And so I encourage you every day to take a moment when you're outside, either walk into your car and actually at least stand on the ground, even if the shoes are between you and the earth, and recognize all we have to be grateful for. Next.
Thank you. Yes, that is one.
Do you have any declarations of interest on the agenda today? Thank you. Somebody to move the motion. Thank you. Sorry. Second. Sorry. Thank you. Somebody move the motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting. 1, 2. All right, Byron, you're first. Updates and financials. Do we got anything?
No, not really. I think one grant came in though, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Rachel, I know I was at the executive meeting, so.
Yeah.
Did a grant not come in?
So we received a small payment from Eco Canada, which was for Lindsay's salary for the first few months. So that was received. We are writing grants quite ferociously, but we have not received words and they're not due yet. So nothing to me.
But that would be the old large change. It's status quo.
All right, can I get a motion to accept financials presented? Fair enough. All right, on to events.
Events, we don't have a ton of updates on events. We've been meeting, talking about our events. We haven't moved forward, other than Block Party is now 2 days, July 14th and 15th, and we decided to do that to be able to apply for a grant that has the requirement is a festival that's a minimum of 2 days. So it's now a 2-day event. The July 14th will be a Friday evening, and Instead of programming stages on the street, we would be looking to encourage and work with businesses who want to host entertainment inside their. And we have secured sponsorship for Block Party, type of sponsorship with Davidson Flat. But other than that, there's nothing new. I don't believe Ms. Rachel knows something that I don't.
I don't know how many people were in the loop that we were looking to bring a Busker Festival, but we are stepping back from that this year because we've already got quite a few things going on. So we're hoping to bring that to the table next year so we can plan it fuller and actually go after some grants for that. Since we're on events, if it's okay, and I know overstepping, Sarah, I will. Yeah, foreclosures. So we will be looking for a motion for potential foreclosures. So Foley, June 24th, Block Party, July 15th. We're not doing closure on the Friday night unless we have that desire. Grape and Wine Parade After Party, September 23rd, which is the same day as obviously Grape and Wine Parade. And
So
how
the
we.
person who's here on that day.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Sorry, which day is it then?
Oh, it does. You're right.
My original-
September 23rd.
The original copy is.
I will have to update all those. That's great.
What was the date?
23rd.
Sorry, 23rd.
But did that change?
No, I didn't. It would be
Just
Sarah.
write 23rd on it.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be first, like, you don't have.
Yeah, we don't need to print that.
Yeah, that's just fine.
And then the last one would be October 28th for Halloween. So if we could get a motion for those foreclosures, so we can get in touch with the arrangements of the city, there is a little bit more work this year with the city. It's not just a blanket, here's your closure, sign an agreement. We do have to do a lot more back and forth. So it would be great if we could get the go ahead to get that out.
So I was going to say, I did say there was no declaration of interest, but maybe I should not vote on this because I programmed some of the things for the event and I kind of benefit from that. So maybe I should step back from this vote.
I just wanted to know, I know through the meetings with the Holy Festival, we were talking about what was still gonna happen because they weren't sure if it's gonna be a closure. But then we were like, yes, we need a closure, and then we weren't sure what end it was gonna be on or how we're gonna fill the streets. Did we figure that out yet?
We have not. And so my preference though is that we move ahead with the closures for the same footprint as last year, because it's the easiest thing to do, but bearing in mind they maybe scale back depending on what activations we have to illustrate. So there's still some work to be done around each of them, but if we can go for bigger and scale back, maybe that would be my preference.
So that's,
I have
Oh, sorry, I didn't see Kate. Katie,
No,
go
that's
ahead.
okay. My question is not to do with the road closures. It's more just a general ask. Could we get these dates sent out in calendar invites to the whole board so they're on our calendars, and then if things change, it's like reflected in the calendar invites?
Questions? Good?
Yeah, absolutely, good idea.
That would just make it easier for me to remember what's happening when personally, and I think it'd be helpful maybe for everyone.
Sure.
But if we need a motion for the road closures, I'm happy to put that motion forward as well,
is that, just?
unless there's still discussion.
Is that just a general consensus to close the streets with discussion as to which streets and which times?
Yeah,
To come later?
they probably won't be all the areas, like Halloween was only in Jane Street last time, unless it has a demand, unless there's a need, like those kind of things for expansion can be probably more scaled back.
No, we have had some people in the East End ask to be involved and asked to have activations of their own during that time. So that's what we're looking at, because they said that they want to activate now, doesn't mean that they're going to activate. It's if there's no activations in those areas, then we shouldn't close the road. But if they want to activate during that time and they're expecting to have a road closure, they should have the opportunity. The discussion during our last events meeting.
Yeah, we don't have the exact map for it. What's happening yet.
So the discussion to come later as to which streets and which times.
So I will just chime in a little bit. The preference is to give, just because we are only meeting once a month as a board, and I need to be giving data to the city ASAP. So my preference is that we scale, like we keep it to the larger scale, with the ability to scale back at the discretion of the events committee, rather than the board, just to give us a quicker turnaround.
But Joe, that means the core is always gonna be shut. But Jane Street.
Not necessarily, because the Holy Festival will take place in the dens. And if there's no one activating that area during that time, then it's pointless to close as well. But we want to be able to give businesses in those areas that are expecting to be able to have core road closures and activate during that time, the opportunity to, but if they're not going to be activating, then those areas won't be closed.
And I will just to give you a little bit more information too, so, and homework. So you will see these documents in your package. So this was based on, I think it was Jen's motion at the last meeting to get support to go door to door to get feedback. So I went through most of the businesses, most of which are on the road closure, some that aren't, so we have a bit more of a rounded feedback. And I've assigned businesses to each board member. Please let me know if this doesn't work for you, or if you want to negotiate with fellow board members to trade businesses. I'm not going to say anything. So my preference is if we can get door to door to businesses with this sheet to say these are the proposed events this year with the proposed road closures and get feedback, that will help us be able to determine what areas fully are closed, what will be activated, where do I want them, that kind of thing. It just takes time going door to door. So if we can divvy it up, so we've done about 5 businesses per member, per board member. Katie has a lot more than most, just because she's an eager beaver and put her hand up for those. So if anybody else wants to have this as a competition, free selection of or first selection of the treats for the next meeting, board member that gets the most, I will. So just to help us get input quicker, if that is okay, so that would be really appreciated.
So I have a question about that. So a big part of what we talked about surveying was about the potential for a park next year, which they don't.
Yeah, good question. You're right, and we do have an event, you're right. You're right, because I totally got sidetracked in other purposes for the the survey. Let me create either a little sheet that can go with it with the survey for the car show. Katie has created one.
Yeah.
So we can easily either QR code it, or I can write a couple questions that as you go in, you can just note on that sheet.
Yeah.
The premise behind this one was that we could give it to the businesses to hold on to maybe put it up on a notice board. That's some feedback that I've had, like Scotiabank, for example, said, can we have something like this that I can run our lunch period so staff can see it?
Yeah.
So that was kind of the hope behind this a little bit, was that it's something tangible they can hold on to and put in their calendars and so forth.
Yeah. Just a reminder, it does say September 15th for the parade after party, so if you have these sheets, if you can just make a correction before you bring that to businesses.
Or we can get you new ones.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be reprinted, like it's a really simple fix, you just put the 23rd on there. But
Yeah.
So the question, when we go into these businesses, the question is, hi, we're the downtown association, we're doing the foreclosures, these are what they are, how do you feel? And then we just kind of, like in general.
They did. So this doc here, I will share, but it's linked to the agenda as well. But it basically lists the data spoke to them. If the survey was completed, that's based on, this was done based on Katie's survey, and then we created it. So I will give you the survey link. So then if the survey is completed on the car show, and then I'm gonna add a column that will just say feedback on road closures. So if you go in and they're like, oh, road closures again, no way, they're mad. just say, don't want road closures or whatever you want to word it as. If they go in and they're like, oh, this is exciting, I really want to do something, just put their interest, or just, you know, however you want to acknowledge that. Then we can do further follow-up with the businesses that have expressed interest to get something concrete. We just need to know what side of the fence they're on.
Should we follow up with a why if they're like,
Sure, the more info you guys can gather, the better. But
I think that if
they
we
have
can
to come up with a why.
if we can do this in a really impartial way, if we can not try to steer the conversation in one way or another, we just want their opinion. We all know our own opinions. We need their opinions, unbiased from what we're saying. We just want to go in and ask them how they feel, what they prefer, and write that down.
We do have Katie's survey.
Yeah, we totally can. So that was sent out. Well, I can send it out again.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Yeah, and I can give you a printed copy to each one too, so that way you can, if you're like me, want to see the paper and read it off in front of you, you can.
Plus one of that.
Mine was also specific to the car show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a big thing for me was I think that we have a really hard time getting members to engage and talk about how they feel about things. But I think we had talked about going into a small number of businesses ourselves and finding out what their opinion is, because I think the car show is something that everyone has a really strong opinion one way or another, and it's a really easy way to get people engaged. And that might start the conversation and start the ball rolling in other directions and help them get engaged with us more on more things. I think that the car show conversation is a really great way to get people feeling comfortable talking with us and giving us their opinions, because it's something that people feel so strongly about.
Rachel, if you have any other questions?
Yeah,
But even too, asking them, did you see something that worked? Because even to me asking my dad, like long ago, he's like, yeah, they had like a basketball tournament and they had this, like, there are certain things that they remember that worked back then that may not work, but I mean, those are little things you can fill up the street and get huge crowds when you bring kids into sports, right?
Yeah.
I love that idea. And also too, with that survey, maybe we want to add a question, because I know on there it says, if you have concerns, what are they? So that's really helpful in like finding where people's fears are about any of the events that we're doing. But then maybe also adding a question that says, if this isn't something, or whether or not this is something you're interested in, are there any other ideas you would love to see for downtown? So instead of just walking in and asking like the specific question about one event, and if we're going in and having this conversation, being able to open it up and see what other ideas they have at the same time.
Yeah, because our members have a lot of really great ideas, and there's a lot of people who've been around for different periods of time and seen things work, and people who have new, fresh ideas. So I think those are really
being able to capture those ideas in the form of a survey, so we have that data somewhere to reference, and it's not just like in our heads conversationally. So if maybe add that question on.
Great idea.
Aside from that, Rachel, you need us to do a motion for the four. So I'll just take the recommended one. Here's the recommended motion from the working group. That the SDA prioritize Holly, block party, the grape and wine after party, and Halloween for the 4 road closures in the same areas as last year. Thank you, second. Okay, second. Jen? First. No, thanks. Oh. All right, any opposed?
Just a clarifying question, it's the same foreclosures we were discussing before, really.
Yeah.
So not much has actually changed.
Nope.
And again, I will state that I'm stating out of interest.
All right. Anything else on the event? On the executive.
One question then, is James Street closed on all 4 of those events then?
As of right now, but it may change.
At least 3, but maybe 4.
All right, for the executive committee update, there isn't one. Between the safety meeting, the monthly meeting, and then going to the OBI conference, we've covered. Essentially, there's nothing new to add. I can't emphasize that enough. So, let's move on to streetscapes.
I don't think we've had a chance to look at the link provided in this, meeting update for the agenda. But we're still in the conversation of garbage. We did clarify or get clarification that, yes, our catchment is ineligible for large garbage pickup. I did send an email to Robin. I back to her because I, having discussions with Peter from the region and other individuals from the city. I really do feel that we need, maybe Robin and or Caleb's guidance to, city speak on these topics, because obviously this is an issue that, all of us see, when we have, large garbage left out on the streets that, the city or region has to pick up every single day, which of course we're not making any revenue from, but taking risk because these are heavy pieces. So when these discussions happen over the next couple of weeks, I'm sure I'll have more to report, because I would, there's quite a few of us that would like to see some changes with respect to that, or a little bit more discussion, because obviously, you know, we're not having less garbage downtown, we're having more garbage downtown. So it's definitely a conversation that is evolving and not going away.
I'd like to remind us the implementation responsibility of the city. The region just says we do what the city tells us. It's contract that they have.
Miller.
We've got to put pressure on the city. The city will change, not the region. Region will just collect.
Yeah, it's a little bit broader of a discussion than that, actually, David, because we're in the middle of a contract with Miller right now, which, oh, I see Robin is actually outside her. I'm not sure if Robin knows if it's a 5-year contract.
Hi, Jen. It isn't, as much as I would love to say that Caleb and I can do something about garbage. Ultimately, it is not. I have very little say when it comes to garbage. Regional councillors, yep, Rigby, Height, Secord, are the ones that have the impact with garbage. I'm dealing with garbage all over the city. And it doesn't matter what I say if they don't contact. If the regional councillors aren't involved, then there is little I can do. I'm happy to have a conversation, but ultimately you need to talk to the region. It's got to be the region.
Yeah, so I'm having very positive, pragmatic discussions with Peter. He sits on the committee with us. He's doing a great job helping us fill in these cracks. Some of the city picks up the garbage, some of the region picks up the garbage, because it's not, there's no formal large garbage pickup downtown. So it's kind of a bit of a free-for-all with respect to picking up. Miller has the contract, which was negotiated in 2018, 2019, start in 2020. I think it's 5 years. So we're obviously not amending the contract. We have to come up with a pragmatic, comprehensive solution, talking to the councillors and the regional councillors. Like, obviously, I'm talking about the councillors in our board, because it's the board. This is our captain, and I'm not doing this for other parts, to help manage this issue, so that we can kind of find a solution for this impasse before the contract is up, so that maybe other things can be added to the contract for the future. Obviously, if this isn't a discussion for today. So Robin, I only reached out to you because to actually speak to the regional councillors. I'm not as, you know, knowledgeable with respect to all of the talk and verbiage and the lexicon of these bylaws. So if any kind of guidance would help us have a discussion with Peter, and then go to the councillors and be able to come up with some comprehensive solution, so that we can actually either generate revenue or come up with some short-term plan in the interim until the contract is up.
If I may ask, are we dealing with large items?
It's a large garbage pickup,
Okay,
There's no,
large garbage.
there's no legitimate method.
no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Large items have not been dealt with.
Correct.
But again, having dealt with garbage.
Yep.
On some situations on properties downtown, again, is the city that said, other than large, it's the city's responsibility. They dictate what's going to be in the contract and the region carries it out.
So
Correct, Robin?
Only partly.
Oh.
The final contract is signed, the final contract signed by the region. The city defer, like, we can negotiate, like, there is a small amount of negotiations, but again, I would say that, I mean, going straight to the 5 regional councilors are the ones to go to.
Well, you better straighten Catherine Habermill out, because she's told me on several occasions, it is a city contract, the city and the region just collects it, that's all. I'm a little confused.
Katie, did you have anything? I saw your hand up earlier there.
I don't remember.
Let's look at it. Let's look at it.
Not recently, but I'm thinking historically, we've, because we've had 2 big bins, back at our store, we had some frequency of large items left next to those bins. And, whenever we would call, they were generally picked up in a day or with a second phone call.
That's part of the problem. There is no legitimate mechanism to get rid of large garbage pickup, but they still pick it up. So
Yeah,
as a result, it just gets left on the street for days at a time until they're around next.
Until,
So hey, there's no schedule, there's no regular garbage pickup. They're still doing the work. It's just with legitimacy, you can schedule a time and it'll be on it like that point. Right now, it's just a free for all. Leave it out until somebody takes it because they will. We have no choice. So let's-
Or if it is just a building owner calls because they need it removed from their premises or for safety reasons. It's really important to recognize that when you go to type in your address on the regional site, okay, the prompt you will get is that you are ineligible for a large garbage pickup. It's more of a multi-use building perspective. I don't know if it's pertaining strictly to address, but there's parameters. Anyway, we're figuring it out. At the end of the day, what's happening is that you are not eligible to purchase a ticket, you know, just say if it was a refrigerator or a sofa or I don't know, a water cooler, right? You're not able to purchase that $20 ticket and put it onto a piece of garbage and leave it out onto the street to be picked up on whatever day and time that the region or city lets you know, like you would in the residence, right? Unfortunately, I think what's happening is that when people are going to the website and they are being prompted with the fact that they are ineligible, they just dump garbage because maybe they're moving to another city. They obviously live downtown, so they probably don't have a Ford F-150 truck and a trailer at their disposal. They're probably walking or taking public transit. So they obviously are not don't have as much of an access to a vehicle. But at the end of the day, the city or region still has to pick up this garbage. Of course, still has to take the risk for picking up this garbage because of course it's big, it's heavy, people could get hurt, but also are making no revenue from it at all, but still doing the work because the reality is they're still picking it up. So obviously it's a broader conversation, it's quite dynamic, David, much as you kind of pointed out, and Robin has as well. So we're working on it right now with the city and the region to kind of come up with a pragmatic solution. If anyone has anything to share, please let us know or join Streetscape even for one thing to let people know what they would like to say as we try to figure this out.
bottom line is let's negotiate and discuss.
Absolutely.
All right, if there's nothing else from there, we're doing the marketing. But Katie, as there was no marketing meeting this month, I don't think you wish to update.
I do. I have a very, very quick update on 2 short things. I know later we've got some a full report back from the OBIA conference, but I was lucky to be in attendance and I was very lucky to get to see Kat and Rachel do their presentation with Dr. Tapo, a future Black female. And from a marketing standpoint, it made downtown St. Catharines look super amazing. They did such an incredible job. It was, even though I'm biased, like my favorite talk of the entire conference that I got to see. So I just wanted to make sure that they were acknowledged for the incredible work they did representing downtown St. Catharines. And the other thing I wanted to bring up was, where did the chat go? I'm popping a video that Kat did to get sponsorship for the downtown block party. It was like a video she made to try and attract potential sponsors for this event. And it did so well that it actually got us a leading sponsor for it. So I just wanted, if anyone didn't see it, to check out that video, and round of applause for Kat and all the hard work she did on that. So that's all my update is.
Well done.
Do you guys like to see the video?
It's great. We should watch it.
It was like, Kat, you were able to put it on the screen? Awesome.
You were ready.
We posted it on like Friday, and by the Monday we had like a thing for credit. We sent a sponsorship package and they went with the top rock package. So it was fantastic, yeah. So it really speaks volume, but it takes work to do, right? So.
Well, and then that sponsorship piece is gonna help us with the grant piece as well, so that it really expands what we're gonna be able to do with it.
And we have it for future years.
We want to see it.
Especially because it's only been that long since.
Yeah, very good.
And it's quite funny because we go to see the sponsor, Brian and I, and they're like, oh, we'll help you guys get exposure. And I'm like, yeah, we have more followers than you do on our social, so who's giving you exposure here?
But we will take your money.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I did not think that, but yeah.
Kat, you probably have the original file even. That might be better to share.
Oh, yeah, you got the, was that the TikTok?
No, what?
Was that the TikTok version?
That was the Instagram version, and now I don't know where.
Ah, fair enough.
Check it out on our social, because you guys will follow us, right?
Yeah, I mean, watch this, but that's.
It was completely effective.
Yeah.
It took 0 business days to.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you send that to all the members, sir?
Yeah.
Please?
All right.
I don't have our accounting budget right now, but.
You have a chance.
Yeah.
You get bored of it, it's just want to be fun.
Because there is still other sponsorship opportunities for other events and other time slots and other.
Every event needs sponsors. Everything really needs sponsors, even planters, flowers. So if you're not involved with money, that's not probably.
Let's see. I guess after marketing, government day.
Okay, so we are looking at creating a subcommittee to address conflict of interest policy. And yeah, that's something it's really important. So I guess we need to make a motion on creating a subcommittee, do we?
No, right
No, okay, well, if anybody wants to be that, great, yeah, Byron. Byron's kind of so like if that's not something that you have the capacity for, we understand.
I do, but have to make it.
Okay.
I cannot, yeah, makes a.
Really? What is he so odd?
Just your month. May, November, December, those are the 3 months that I get to.
And it's an ongoing thing, right? So if we get started before you can always join us.
Oh, yeah, I would love to join. That's my, yeah.
Essentially, we want a piece of paper that gives us defense in case we ever have investigations. So like, this is what we do. Please leave us alone.
This is how we cover ourselves, and this is how we are transparent and accountable.
Or even better, this is how we operate, so that we don't have a reason to have to cover ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's,
exactly. Yeah,
So next one.
yeah.
but
Perfect.
it's, and you're pertaining that to the conflict of interest issue, that's the main point.
So I will just
We
give
want
you
to
guys,
avoid it.
I'll just give you guys an example. So there's a lot of BIAs right now that are in compete, I guess you could say, because of either lack of transparency or conflict of interest perception, sometimes not even, what's happening. And so as you guys know, we're a local board under the Municipal Act, which means anybody can go to the Integrity Commissioner on us and file a complaint, which is their right. The Integrity Commissioner then would undergo, if deemed necessary, a full investigation, which is quite costly, and would investigate everything. And if we don't have these policies in place to cover us, we can't go to the clerk's department when one makes a complaint and say, actually, you know what, here's all the documents, portions we take to make sure that we don't have these conflicts of interest. And just to give you an example, in Toronto, there was a BIA that shared that they had an integrity commissioner complaint against them. And the integrity commissioner went so far down through their books and through their dealings that even brought up something like buying milk from a board member's business before a board meeting was not appropriate. So, yes. So the argument is that board members should not directly financially benefit from being on the board. So we basically have to create this conflict.
Was it outside of daily life living that they normally do?
No, it was to go to a board meeting. So it was milk for the coffee at a board meeting. So the argument is that that board member directly benefited financially through that. So
Did the person go out of their way to do it though?
I don't know.
There was
That
also-
it's perceived that,
that.
right? But a lot of, so, and this was a topic that I asked a lot of other BIAs at the conference about, because I have a hard time with it too, because it seems a little bit. too
No
much.
problem. Thank you. Bye now.
But, the feedback I received was it's better safe than sorry. And the best practice is basically not, unfortunately, to support your board members' businesses financially through the BIA. Because it's deemed as a conflict of interest, which, so a lot of guys out there have a policy that says, we get gift cards, we do not get them purposely from board members' businesses because of that perceived conflict of interest. If we rent space, we can't pay for it at board members' business. Those kind of an issue that it's right. That we need to come up with this policy to say, where do we lay in this? Where is our line kind of thing?
It's too bad. I was more about building a community, like supporting each other and building a community versus like just.
And no, it's a challenge.
But if we come up with a good policy that covers those caveats and these are the exceptions, then it can become more reasonable, but you've got to make it idiot proof. That's.
What about just adding a value to it? I have some common sense. I have trouble with that. That Sarah come to me and say, I want my building downtown. I want a new lease. And I'm gonna have a conflict of interest with that?
No, they're not using board dollars. So, for example, if John was still around our table and we lease space from him as we do, the people that I spoke to that are very well respected in the BI world, quite high positions, basically said he should remove himself from the board or you should move your office.
It's receivable items, that's what we gotta keep in mind. Someone bought milk, received it to the BIA, and they said that it was direct conflict of interest. And the person who just bought the milk, set it down, let people use it, it would have been fine. It's on your receivables. That's the only way that the commissioner can bring it up, is that it was receivable. So we're just gonna ask that everyone does everything for free every day.
I don't need to know. So you need to bring flowers for everybody?
Chairs from Joe.
Robin, I have you with this.
Like those only ones, Karen?
Sorry, just want to mention non-pecuniary interest as well. That's also under the Municipal Act. So it's also the perception of a conflict. Just, it's not just financial. There's also the that people might want to consider as well. As part of your whole governance motion.
Yeah, Robin.
Yeah, we'll try to incorporate it in.
So when in doubt, you would your approach, let's just say if you don't know. Common sense. No, common sense.
Like
You gotta approach somebody and saying, asking a question. If you're not sure, you should be able to go to somebody. Who are you going to say?
For the BIA world, Obia. Obia is the expert on it. BIA world.
So there we go.
But they're also draconian. They were hard on that.
Well, no, that was the integrity commission.
Oh, okay.
Not Obia.
Okay.
Because they got 1% instead of.
Robin, your hands up?
I think it was left.
Oh, it was left up?
Yeah.
Sorry, left it up.
All right.
Welcome back, Robin.
All right. Next.
So the 50-30 challenge, it's in regards to diversity. Rachel really speaks better to it than I do. She's a lot more versed in it than I am.
So the 50-30 challenge is something that the Canadian government has actually come up with and they're encouraging every organization to follow this model. And it is basically 50% of your board or staff should be male, female, or male, non-binary, just non-male. Like it should be the other 50%. And then 30% should be from diverse backgrounds. So they know people aren't gonna like this, reach these goals. So it's a work towards, and you've got to show step, well, you don't have to, but so anyway, I signed this up because I figured it's a good thing for us to sign up, and you don't have to have it. You just need to say, it's something we value, we're working towards. So the 50-30 website has tremendous information, really useful stats, really useful information. There are so many stats out there too, that really speak to the benefits of having diverse representation around the table and on your staffing. And so I think that's one of the main reasons that I signed this up, because I do think it's something that would benefit the organization as a whole. It is also something that we spoke to quite strongly in the presentation that we did with Obia, which was called Intentional Inclusive Streets. So if any, I will probably be sharing some of those resources along the way with each of the board members. They've got really quick videos on tips and tricks, or, you know, how to make sure you're using appropriate wording, or how to, you know, what is privilege, or, you know, that kind of stuff that are just really educational things for us to be aware of that I think will not help only the board, but also daily life and business. So
50-30 challenge, did they remove the diversity factor? Like, they used to actually count what was in your catchment area or in an area as a whole. So let's say you were a predominantly Black community. I'm gonna use this as a very prime example because big issue in Toronto. You do the 50-30 challenge, but then they realize that the percentage of people still serving in an area versus who lived in the area still weren't actually matched. They were very uneven, and vice versa somewhere else where they had the exact same issues happen. Are they still leaving that in, or have they removed that completely, where we're gonna end up with the same issue that the fire department had and has now come back on?
So as far as
That was a huge legal battle, and I think it should really be noted, because the 50-30 challenge, although I'm not against the challenge whatsoever, actually invited, I think it really should be noted that it is a very important point that has been made now in those professions, and they've now removed it for very good reasons. So I don't know if everyone's versed on what's happening in those areas, but when we do the challenge, if we're really going to go there, we really have to make sure that we are actually meeting our demographic area, not just adding people to say that we're diverse. It's a massive issue, especially in professions like policing, firefighting. They started removing people who were really good at the job to replace them, to make sure that they had diversification, and then people died because they didn't take the person who was best at the job. They took the person who was diversified. That didn't translate. So I just want to make sure that we also pay attention to that, because you don't want to have a reversal happen where you're actually driven from the wrong standpoint. Because I would want the people who want the best for St. Catherine's at the table, not the person who showed up for a myriad of factors that actually had nothing to do with the decision made.
And from the research that I've done through 50/30, that I'll be honest with you, they don't have any checks in the system. It's basically, are you going on to put this challenge, yes or no? And that's pretty much the question they ask. They're not asking where we're at in the challenge. They're not asking what steps we're taking to get on the challenge. It's very much, and they're leaving it up to the organization to take those steps, which I think is good because it gives us the ability to make it what we want it to be. But I do think that, you know, diversity sometimes isn't always seen in certain areas. And I would say that I know Niagara sort of is very white, but it's really not. So I think we need to be mindful of that and make sure that we're doing our best to make sure that we are being inclusive and diverse. I think Robin may have had her hand up, so she may have took it down again.
I have my hand up.
Oh, Katie has her hand up. There was
Yeah.
a hand.
I was just gonna add, like, to that. I would say, as like, for what's best is very subjective. And if there's people who've been traditionally not included at a table, they have their skill sets and their knowledge and their expertise and their lived experiences. Often bring something to tables that people didn't even know it was missing because they had never been there. And I especially think when it comes to a board such as our own, where it really relies on a bunch of different businesses and points of interest and understandings coming together, that if we don't make good efforts in diversifying both in gender and like race and other lived experiences, then we're going to be doing ourselves a disservice. And there's no one objective way to do well on this board as long as people are committed and excited to be here. So I really don't think we're going to run into those issues with this challenge whatsoever. And I honestly would argue that the framing of those issues even existing is not real.
Yeah.
Sorry, Josh. I will also just add, we as staff-wise have been working really hard to be as inclusive as possible in the office and have really built a very strong relationship with all of our partners, which is why we could go and present not just two white women talking about inclusivity, but have representation with it. And I hope everybody's aware, but Dr. Tapo runs Future Black Female. Future Black Female is the new makerspace that's running, that's out of a vacant space. It's been vacant for some time out of the core block. And they, it's a collective of female entrepreneurs that can run out of this makerspace, who are then going to go on to open other businesses in our downtown. We have, I think what the stats were, about 6 new businesses, Black owned, 7 new Black owned businesses in the last 6 months alone in our downtown. So the stats speak numbers, and that to me is something we need to make sure that we're supporting, because it's the future of, you know, revitalization.
I just look back 50 years and I count the number of women on this board. Women were not considered people before they came to vote in 1925. You know, so the world evolves, and I'm not at all interested in creating barriers or thinking about what might happen. You know, I go to a church in St. Barnabas, went to a funeral. They have one family that is West Indian. The funeral was full. I've never seen Black people in St. John, in St. Catherine's in one place. And guess what? They all live here. You know, so I think the initiative is an evolution of our society. That's all it is. And we just have to get on. So yeah, give it a whirl and let's do it. It's great.
I guess I missed out really with the 50/30 event. Just so I'm clear, because I get that it's like inclusivity, but I wasn't sure what the 50/30 event.
No worries. So it basically means that we're taking steps to become 50% representation non-male. So either through staff or board, and then 30% diverse representation either through staff or board. And you know, everybody kind of agrees it's not about firing and rehiring. if we've got good people in those spots already, we're not gonna let go of everyone. It's more just when we're looking for to fill empty spots, that we need to have this first and foremost in our mindset of making sure we're adding diversity to our team.
Can I add on that too? Because I've been through this more than one board, and it's very interesting. Because you can sometimes run into an issue, like we had at one board. It was all male board, so we went looking for female board members, like very, very specific. And it was very difficult. We had to hire a third-party company to help us. When all was said and done, we still couldn't get one. Couldn't get it. They didn't want to join, and we were like, "Why?" The answer was, "None of us are interested. We don't care."
Yeah.
So then we had this issue where it's like, well, where do we go from here? Like, what do we actually get forwards from here? Like, we're trying to meet this demand, but we can't get anyone to come up to the table. They said, you just gotta keep trying and keep going. That's part of the test is, are you actually trying to do it? Like, are you putting any time into it? Are you putting any resource into it? Is the thought even there? Like, has it crossed your mind? Because there are boards that you will find out that they don't even have the discussion, and it's really sad. As far as I know, today, there's still nobody else at the board, which sucks. But you don't want to like you don't know. We've had outside help, they're just like, good luck. It's like, what do you mean good luck? Keep going. That sucks.
But at least you're still trying. It's not like you tried and you're like, well,
Yeah.
That it just is what it is.
It is.
And then you should let go of that. You gotta keep trying and
You gotta keep
pushing.
Yeah.
And keep
It's-
trying to attract more diverse.
Not that there's diversity in the board. It's just that there's only males. So like we talk about color, we talk about race or anything like that. That's the non-issue. It's just it's not a single issue.
Katie, one more for yourself, and I have something to add before we move on.
Totally. Robin also had her hand up, but nope. Okay. I was gonna say too, like if it is that hard to recruit a certain demographic to a board, then I would like this whole 50-30 challenge. It's not about the 50% or 30%. It's about creating a culture in our downtown that we don't even have to think about this 50 and 30%. Like it's just the numbers happen after the actual genuine inclusion manifests itself. So honestly, like if we could get to like 60-40 or whatever, like it's not about whatever percentage that is, it's making sure that everything we do and how we operate as a board is with inclusivity in mind. And that's not the end goal of having a certain percentage of people on there, because if you were lacking that, it's because there's a culture or there is something that is happening in that space that is creating those barriers. And because it's been we've been around for so long, and because a lot of us, well, all of us are at least white passing, we're not going to be aware of those barriers unless we put effort into learning about them and breaking them down. And then once we do those things, then the numbers happen as a side effect, not as the primary driver. So when you're going in and recruiting, you're not recruiting, we want more women on this board, we want more people of color on this board. You're going in with recruitment strategies that are inclusive, so you don't have to worry about those numbers at the end of the day.
Sure.
Just a quick thing, and I think this really can put some teeth into what we're talking about. Thank you, Rachel, for being really intentional about saying non-male. When we talk about male and female, now we're in binaries. If we make a commitment to say that it's not how we're going to speak, and if we're willing to be brave and go, no, I'll help you just talk about women and men. Well, there's way more than that, right? We make that commitment, and we're in a place of learning and a place of growing, and that will in turn attract people who feel comfortable and safer here, and making it a safer space for people to join in and be part of. So thank you.
Now, obviously, when it comes to our board, we are elected officials. And while that, if somebody were to step down, that could definitely help inform our decision for helping somebody if we were to find something ourselves versus having another official. Is there any practical things we could be doing?
Oh, there's so many grants. stuff.
Could you like?
And that, yeah, so I mean, look at the events that we do. So if we were to, for example, pull some of these events, like Holi, which is, based on a Hindu festival. If we were to pull or cancel that, we would lose faith in that community, which means they would, and for example, with Holi, we had one of our committee members moved to the downtown. We had a new Indian restaurant open after that. So again, huge impacts, right? And if we don't use our actions through events, through things that we support, through those things, then people will be like, oh, well, they don't have a voice. I don't have a voice. Because clearly they don't represent me. So we need to be diverse in what we're doing as an organization in order to make sure that we're speaking the right language. Even for example, the red dresses that are being installed just this week on St. Paul Street, that's through a partnership with a fantastic lady, an Indigenous lady, to support that community because we feel, and I'm being a bit broad here, but we feel that that's really important. We need to partner with those communities, to show that they have a voice, that we're willing to listen and work with them, because then they're more likely to come to our board. And I know that, typically it's member voted in, but at the end of the day, engagement goes up when we engage with those different communities and we support them. So we'll see more diversity when we have our meetings with the members or our AGM from those diverse communities so that they are voting accordingly. And it's, that's how we get the diverse representation around our board.
It's creating safe spaces.
I just have a quick question on that, and I think that's like a great thing that you said about the Holi Fest, but like, do you think that maybe like to make this Holi Festival bigger in the sense of having a culture fest? So it's not just or would that be not good to have it on that same day?
The challenge is sometimes, so the challenge is sometimes when you order things down, but that's how it's perceived, right? When you're not giving, Holi is a fantastic celebration that can easily stand up. And the minute you try and pair things with it, it looks like you're saying it's weak and that you've got to add things to
But
make
I
it.
think one of the things that we're saying is that, and the people that were saying at the events committee is that sometimes with an event that's not so big that it's worth closing everything, is to have like volume, create volume, right? Like that's even like in the store, you're busy, you create busyness. I just didn't know if it was something you had another, like, you did a different, not fest, but like something else, so it almost became like a culture fest, so it's like everyone's not up.
Everybody is still welcome to that event, I would say though, and I don't think we need. It's tricky. A lot of places, you're right, do culture festivals, especially around food and stuff, right? So you'll like an international food fair or whatever. I personally feel for Holi, if we were to add something that wasn't fitting that culture to it, it would weaken it. And not necessarily it would weaken it would weaken the support that community feels from us, right? Because they would take it or perceive it as, oh, we're not good enough to only focus on us. So now they're just trying to put everything in a bucket and do it all at once as their token, right? And I think we need to be mindful and purposeful about what we do.
I think it was just my only question was, and I didn't want to water them down by any means, my only question was, we wanted to have full closure. So we were talking about how a lot of people said that it had to stay on that versus trickling down to closure for us. That's what I always suggest.
Last point to Jen.
I think I do see what you're saying, Amy, in the sense, like Rachel had mentioned as well, like international fairs, things like that. India, I think as of last week, became the most populous in the world. To say that we could grow Holi throughout the entire catchment is probably an understatement, because they probably have more culture within the provinces in India than the entire world, because they have such a huge population and such a diverse population. I guess I look at it as providing an opportunity to fill those streets by engaging with even more individuals from that area, like bring their music, their art, their
Culture.
yeah, their entire culture, everything about it. and fill the streets. And then by, uplifting them and showing our commitment, showing other cultures, that same for them in this space, because this of course is at the heart of their city as well, right? Very much like Stephen just mentioned about, going to the church. Well, you could probably create a whole culture from people that were at that church. And they could have their own weekend where, baby steps, I guess, to get into bigger, broader and more incredible events. But knocking one out of the park in the most incredible way and showing that we are 100% devoted to uplifting them, and providing a space for them. I mean, to me, it only seems like a huge win.
Well, it was beautiful too, is that I have a girl that came right from India and she works with us. So I sat her down and I'm like, tell me all about it. And the beautiful thing of the color, and I didn't realize, is that everybody from like baby to 99 put color on their face so that no one knows color. And it was a festival that everybody puts everything down. And there's like, if I'm in an argument with him, we release it that day. And it's like the new beginning, like the spring of the beginning, and they all eat together and they all play, and they do like, they play as little kids, that they all put water guns on each other. That's what I'm saying, is that it was only cool to have all cultures together, to be like, we're all together in this. That was my only thing. I would never want to like dismiss one culture.
Well, I appreciate this one more. So I guess on to new business. Do you have
Yeah,
anything?
I will just really quickly share, sorry, don't have to read it, but the motion, the very long motion that is included for the city on diversity, I put it as sample because it may be nice for us to make a motion. I will say it is more actions and more meaningful than words. So I just put it there as a sample if somebody wanted to look to create a motion to talk about diversity around the board, that could be a next step too, but I do think actually people out of there. No, yeah, I just wanted to give it.
Did you have anything you want to talk about the new business of the OBIA conference?
Yes, so the OBIA conference was really good. It was a lot of work, but it was good. It was a lot of work. We were presenting. I think I presented every single day of the conference. So thank you for making us look good.
The reward for hard work.
It's true. So the next hard work that comes, I'm also a big believer in putting your name in the hat for things. So I put my business card in for the door prize and we won. So the door prize was through Downtown Redevelopment, which is our organization to the conference for a couple years in a row now. And I've been to their sessions each time. They're actually really good. They talk a lot about retention, filling vacant spaces, and how to animate downtown. So the grand prize that we won is a roadmap for redevelopment for our downtown, valued at $95,000.
What?
Can you describe it, Rachel?
Not really, if I'm honest with you. I really have no clue. I wasn't even there when they announced it. So I was given a sheet. It basically is very similar to a strat plan, is my understanding. I have a meeting with them next week to talk about it in detail. So this company is from the state and they come, I believe, for 3 days to a whole bunch of research, surveying, gathering feedback and input, and then create this roadmap for us. And their focus is basically using the resources we have. So it's not like a dream list of, fix every road that's out of our hands. Let's be honest, we can't say fix every road. But they will come and look at our resources and what's under our jurisdiction and come up with a roadmap of here's how you can work on these things. So I think it will be very beneficial.
That's super. Well done.
Wow.
Yeah, luck is a good thing sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
If you're kind enough to share the dates with us, if there's an opportunity
I will
to
definitely-
participate,
Totally,
I think
definitely.
that sounds
Yeah,
great.
it's just by Zoom, so I will definitely.
Right. The next thing is the Downtown Heritage and Conservation District Study Plan. David, I believe you had some things you want to say on this one.
Yes, before I get into that, I'd like to commend Rachel. There was an article in the paper of babysitting bicycles when people come to, I'm not using the right words, there's gonna be a facility downtown, a valet. I think that's a bad, no knowledge of it until I read it in the paper. That must have been with the encouragement of Rachel and some other people downtown. It's easy to leave your car at home and try and bicycle, but for a lot of people that are bicycling more and more. And if they come downtown, quite frankly, it's a pain in the ass trying to negotiate, navigate, do everything with your bicycle and get in and out. And to have this valet service where people can come down as families, come down and go to this facility, check your bike. I don't think it takes you 15 minutes from this end of St. Paul to that end of St. Paul and James that people want to visit, and they're not encumbered by having to drag these bicycles. So, commend you on that. I don't know.
I will just quickly say, so that was under the direction of the cycling leadership team, which is the committee under streetscape and sustainability. So on that committee is Wayne, who may have a contact on the table, from Bike Me Up. So Bike Me Up is just located the other side of Geneva Street.
Right.
And so they very graciously volunteered their time to come and oversee this bike ballet. They gave free bike tune-ups that day to anybody who rode their bike. And they also collected bikes for donation because they do repurpose the bike they fix up the bikes and give them out to those in need. So fantastic organization that's under Start Me Up in our community. And we were really, really thankful for that partnership with them. The Cycling Leadership Committee is doing some really neat stuff. And they just actually, as a BIA, we just got acknowledged or whatever as a bike-friendly business area. First one in Niagara to be so. So that was also mentioned, I think, in the article. So that's another big plus. It doesn't mean we're perfect, but it means that this is the direction we're pushing towards. And yeah.
So I bring this to the board because I think it should be going something totally different, but I think it's a
And I'll let
great project.
Wayne's my partner. Yeah.
It's a great project, and I read that.
Yeah.
I read that very gleefully. It was very good. The heritage. The city is embarking on a project with heritage buildings. And I believe, and Robin's going to be looking over my shoulder on this one, that I think there is going to be about 163 buildings designated. There's very few right now. Of the 163, approximately 2/3 or 100 are downtown. And I would just say on behalf of the Downtown Association that they look at this very carefully. Once a building is designated, it can be monumental problems in dealing with the different municipalities, with the owners. The preservation of some of these heritage buildings is important. Don't get me wrong. But what bothered me is the city had suggested they may take the whole downtown area till they have these designations, which can take up to 2 years, Robin.
Robin, you want some clarity to this?
I'll add quite a bit of clarity. Sorry, David.
Let me just finish. I've got a problem with the city taking a whole area. They're talking, as I read it, downtown, which is the different boundaries than our BIA. And as until this is decided, the whole thing will come under heritage control. And I think that is pretty onerous on people that own buildings, the people who want to renovate buildings, owners, landlords, tenants. I'm very skeptical, notwithstanding I do support some of these older buildings, of taking the whole area and make it under control of the city till they decide what's going to be designated and what's not.
Robin, please add clarity.
I will, thanks. Just for clarity of that, Stephen actually was at the council meeting that night. So Stephen, if there's something I missed, please let me know. It's a study. First off, it is the city has currently Port Dalhousie Heritage District, Queen Street Heritage District, Yates Street Heritage District, and Power Glen Heritage District. So we already have 4 heritage districts. The reason the downtown is being looked at is because there is a significant number of buildings that predate 1900. So there is reason to look at designation. We are not designating anything at this point. Before a designation happens, there is a heritage study that usually takes about a year. That includes significant public consultation. That includes talking with property owners. It includes a lot of elements to everything, as well as identifying individual buildings. Part of the study is the heritage consultant that we've probably one that we've hired before will then help create a set of guidelines. Those guidelines are individual to every district. So there is no, single heritage person that then decides what everything is. Within that, each district that's been designated so far has their own specific guidelines and rules that will then provide guidance on streetscaping. It will provide guidance on density and intensification. At no point, and Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, because I believe you were, I know you were there. The heritage planner that we have stated repeatedly that this is not an attempt to freeze downtown into some sort of single old-timey Niagara-on-the-Lake, which, by the way, isn't really heritage, but anyway, that's a whole other story. Downtown is rebuilt in Niagara-on-the-Lake, but it's not an attempt to freeze downtown and never allow it to be redeveloped or to have property owners not be able to do anything with their buildings. I live in a heritage district. I can pretty much do anything I want with my building except build onto the front of it. So if that's the only thing I can't do, it's a pretty easy set of guidelines. It certainly hasn't stopped any development in Port Dalhousie. It hasn't stopped any development in Power Glen. It certainly hasn't stopped any development in Yates Street. So it's a study. Once the study is complete, it would then be brought back to council, public consultation, open houses. Council would then vote on it, and anyone who wants can then appeal it to the Ontario Land Tribunal. So it's a minimum of a 2-year process. So it's not going to happen overnight, and it's certainly not going to be done without public consultation. So that's just some clarification. And it has been done in many, 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 many municipalities across Ontario and Canada, designating their downtowns to preserve the uniqueness and the character of it. So I'm always hesitant sorry, David, when it's presented as a, boogeyman kind of, a heritage boogeyman kind of situation. I hope that clarifies.
Doesn't the property owner come secondary now? If the municipality prior to, and I don't know, a number of years ago, when the municipality wanted to designate a property, the owner had the right to say no. Then a few years later, the municipality says, we have the right to designate it as the property owner, whether you like it or not, correct?
Municipalities have always had that right. Municipalities have always done it. St. Catharines chose for a long time to not do that, but as more and more heritage buildings were being demolished, significant heritage buildings, specifically it was a Lakeshore. I can't remember the number on Lakeshore, but it was a pre-1860 building that was going to be demolished to make way for a neighborhood. We thought I was heritage. I was the chair of the heritage committee at that time. We decided that it was worth saving. So we've always had the ability.
There is a mechanism to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal now?
It's like you've always been able to appeal a heritage designation. The other thing that to keep in, and I'll throw Doug Ford under the bus at this point, because the reason the city is doing this is because the changes that have occurred with build more homes better, whatever that act is called. Stephen knows it better than I do. The many buildings downtown, I believe there's over, it's not 160, it's about 75 buildings downtown have been put on the designate or the land or the heritage registry. And Doug Ford has now said under the Build More Homes Act that if those buildings are not looked at and designated within 2 years, they have to be removed and they stay off any list for 5 years.
Correct.
So the reason the city's looking at this is because we have significant numbers of important heritage buildings downtown. And if if heritage is important, as people keep saying in the community, then this is one mechanism to do that. It's also designating it as a district is very different when it comes to the guidelines and the design guidelines and adding additions. If you're designating an individual building, it's a different story.
No, my question, Robin just answered my question.
Perfect. Robin, do you happen to know the timeline for the study to be finished?
Well, it doesn't go into the budget. We only approve the amount to go into the 2024 budget. So the study will take place probably during 2024. Depending on how long it takes, depending on the areas they look at, it could take a year, it could take a year and a half. And then to write the guidelines, assuming there's a consultant hired, which there probably will be, that's another 6 to 9 months. You're not looking till 2026, 2025, 2026. It's a multi-year process. It takes a very long time.
So with this 2-year timeline for the province, is that even a possible thing to address? I mean, if there's, is it forcing it so quickly that the city can't handle it?
We're doing our best. That's why we're hiring a consultant.
Very good.
And so if I might, I just encourage you to it's the beginning of the process. Process will unfold. You'll have more than any more opportunity to comment than you ever want. And just take that opportunity and let it roll out. I was planning director at the town of Niagara Lake for 7 years. I was planning director in the state of New Brunswick. It has a 20-block heritage district. And I would encourage you to same policy meetings again. And frankly, I would hate to see some of those pulled out of there to build heritage. So the community decide what you want to look at. And so just participate in the process. There's no decisions have been made. There's a lot of downstream. And as the process unfolds, David, you'll become more aware of what opportunities.
Maybe you should also highlight the Build Back Better program a little bit. And there's a massive point objective there that you can actually circumvent your municipality altogether.
Oh,
And it's partly why some of these heritage districts are coming in. So I think that should be noted as well. Some of the heritage district stuff really just protects the community from someone circumventing their own municipality, putting up whatever they want. Rob, correct me when I'm wrong here, but I don't know if you guys know much about Lincoln, but they just had this happen in Lincoln. A building is going up in Lincoln. They went around the town altogether, went direct to the province, and a building will go up with no community involvement now. Simply because they don't have a couple steps in place. So they're getting their building permit directly from the province, not the municipality. So the city as a whole can get removed from a conversation, which is a bit scary. And these heritage districts do help protect those areas so that the province can't just do that. They're not necessarily abandoning heritage districts. So,
Katie.
I was just gonna say.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, from the sounds of it, like that we won't even be within this, like potentially our term when the actual vote on the designation happens. So like Stephen was saying, just participating in every step of the process to the best of our abilities instead of like trying to jump into what the end result might be is probably a good idea.
Robin, did you know something at the other?
No, I'm good.
Anything else from us before we vote on that?
I'm good to this point.
I just wanted to ask, I didn't know, Rachel, if we were, kind of, keeping a list on the directors and that are joining committees and subcommittees. I didn't know, maybe just throwing a call to action out there for people to check them out, and that maybe we can circle back to the next meeting to see who signed up to be on which subcommittee, just so that we're all at least all on.
Perfect. Yeah, I think there's still a couple people that are not assigned per se, so let me know which one you prefer. So I don't just assign you to one you hate. Maybe two. And really quickly, on the back here is all of our committees, in case you're wondering. So we've got governance, events, marketing, communications, streetscape, under that is cycling leadership. The new one, which I haven't started yet, community outreach engagement. Another new one is attraction or retention, which I haven't started yet. Advocacy is under that, which I've already got a couple people actually asking me to start that. Advocacy will address hot topic issues like CIPs or heritage, those kind of things that we need to advocate to preserve about our downtown. So if anyone's interested in those, please let me know.
Do you want to say anything? Let's get.
I guess I just want to let you both know, or let you both know, there's more than two of you here. Let everyone know that for both the Downtown Heritage Conservation District and the CIP program, we did submit letters for those two topics. They were on Monday night council meeting when I was actually presenting at OBIA in London. So I wasn't able to delegate in person, unfortunately. For the CIP program, that one did get the result that we kind of hoped for, which was basically that the review is starting, but no changes will be made till 2025. So that was is that right? No. Go ahead, Robin. That's right? Okay. So that was what was proposed already, and our stance on it was don't change this. Developers have this in mind, and if you pull the rug out from under them and change what you've told them is going to happen, that's the worst thing you can do for a downtown. So I'm very pleased that it was, I believe that was a unanimous vote in support of it. So that was fantastic. We still have some advocacy to do on CIPs. There's a lot of misinformation out there. Robin, along with both her fellow councillors, has an education session tonight to increase the awareness of CIPs and what they are, hopefully, so that it is a little bit easier to have more informed discussions around council around CIP.
Jenny.
On that note, is there potential to have like a webinar or a little info session for board members who may not be super familiar with CIPs and would like to learn more? I mean, like, I know what they are, but I'm curious to what this misinformation is.
Yeah, and that's something that maybe
because I might have the misinformation. I don't know.
But maybe it's something we can also do as a workshop for members, just to make it bigger, so to raise awareness. I will be honest, and no offense here, Robin, our CIP is really, just as an example, and I'll be fully honest, I'm spoiled. I'm coming from a very big place of privilege in terms of CIPs. So my previous BIA on Main Street, we had a CIP that was for any revitalization in any part of the building. So you could be fixing up residential, you could be doing HVAC, you could be doing whatever. For a matching grant of up to $50,000. And their budget for just that one street alone, which is my PIA, was $250,000. Our facade improvement grant for the whole city, not just our downtown, requires you to do improvements that fix up from the floor, so sidewalk level, all the way to the top of your building, making it really inaccessible for small businesses to use. And the budget for the year for the whole city is $40,000. The matching grant is up to $10,000. So it really pales in comparison. There's a lot of work that could be done with the CIPs. I'd really like to see some tweaks personally, because I do think that we need to ensure that our small businesses have full access to those CIPs and not just the owners, because I think that would have the biggest impact on our downtown. So it's a conversation I continue to have with staff at the city, and I think they're open to those discussions, which is good. So I think the way is forward with CIPs hopefully, right? Yeah. But yes, good idea, Katie. Sorry, after all that long-winded piece, we can definitely set up some kind of webinar on CIP. Yeah.
Is there any other new business? All right.
Oh, sorry. I should have let everybody know, sorry, but hopefully everybody is aware, because you saw in our newsletter, we have hired a new events and outreach coordinator, and you may be familiar, but it's Brian Gasparini. Anyone remember Brian?
I think we saw Brian here.
Right.
Did Brian pop in?
Oh,
Yeah, right, so, yeah, so he's been a fantastic addition to the team, really kind of hit the ground running, so we're very excited to have him.
It's great.
You your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to Kat and Mike for someone participating on the virtual end of this hybrid meeting. It's been flawless. So I'd say it was worth the wait for all of the teching and stuff like that. And I'm glad we have this option now.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn? Right, David, Chris, and. Get out of here, friends. Friends,